Good evening, everybody. I'm Radio Free Mormon. That's Bill Reel. This is the Mormon Newscast. Usually there's three of us amigos, but the amiga is missing right now. She's checking her tech. That's what we're going to say. And hopefully she'll be rejoining us. She was here earlier, and then there were some glitches and stuff. And it's one of the reasons that we try and gather before the show starts in order to iron those out. But this has been something that's sort of been going on for a few shows now, hasn't it, Bill?
Yeah, somebody in the audience was saying that StreamYard's been having some issues lately. And so, hey, StreamYard, get your act together. We're counting on you. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm going to be presiding over this newscast, Bill. It's my turn to do so. So, and I've got the first story, which is going to go for a bit. So maybe in that time, she'll be able to rejoin us, hopefully. Yeah. All right. So here are the stories in this week's Mormon Newscast. It is Monday. It is August 24th, 2026. There's the thumbnail, Mormon Church backpedaling, ? A picture of John Dehlin, and the Mormon Stories logo, which if it ever looked anything like the church logo, sure as hell doesn't now. It looks like an orange cream sickle. In August, nothing beats it. But it sure doesn't look blue anymore. And it's called Mormon Stories with Dr. John Dehlin. I mean, what is going on with the church? Yes, they're backpedaling. Of course, they're backpedaling. And we're going to talk about that. So the stories that we'll be covering, and I'll just go ahead and take the helm here, Bill. Thank you. LDS Church backpedaling. I guess I gave away the answer on that. Why do LDS influencers keep using the word Mormon? That's Rebecca's story. So she's got to be back for that. Is the Deseret News warning Latter-day Saints against therapy? It sure sounds like it. And Bill Reel's got that story. We may be going back to the days of Bruce R. McConkie and Mormon doctrine, where counseling and therapy were looked down upon and actually told they should not be done by faithful Mormons. LDS funeral shooting update. Big changes at Temple Square. Patrick Kieran. That's the apostle fellow, isn't it? The one with the accent?
That's him. He's the nicest, maybe, the most compassionate out of the group.
I guess at least three of them have accents now, so it's not so unusual. But the English accent, that bloke. Patrick Kieran tells Mormon overachievers to slow down. Sunday school changes problematic. And finally, why is Coach Sitake upset with BYU? Is there trouble in paradise? I think Bill Reel will have that story. All right, well, let's launch off in this first story, the LDS Church backpedaling ? This story surrounds the lawsuit that the church has filed against John Dehlin, which I think they did. I know it was in April. It may have been the 17th or the 20th that they filed the lawsuit against John Dehlin. And since then, he has not only filed the answer, he has also filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit. And interestingly, and perhaps unexpectedly, two large champions came out of the woods to join him in his battle against the LDS Church, one of them being the EFF, which I think is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and also, which has a lot of experience litigating against situations like this, and even against the church as well. And also the ACLU has come in to file an amicus brief on behalf of John Dehlin's side with Mormon Stories, and the same with EFF. So that has happened. And what happened last Thursday in the most recent filing in this case came from the church, and it is their response to the motion to dismiss, primarily to the Mormon Stories motion to dismiss. It is their response to that. And this is what they filed. And it's really interesting what's going on, because I don't know if the legal arguments in the response are that interesting, but everything that's going on surrounding it definitely is. And so here's the story. The LDS Church argues against dismissing lawsuit filed against Mormon Stories podcast. Now, that'd be very confusing headline unless you know everything that's going on in the lawsuit, which is one of the reasons I just recapped it for you. So here we go. Salt Lake City. In a new court filing, this was last Thursday, August 20th, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is arguing against the dismissal of a federal lawsuit over the Mormon Stories podcast. The church's lawsuit, filed against the Open Stories Foundation and John Dehlin, alleges trademark and copyright infringement. It claims the term Mormon and the use of similar imagery, style, colors, and type font confuse the public and make some believe the podcast is connected to the church or endorsed by it. Now, here's what happened on Thursday. They don't just file, by they, I mean the church, doesn't just file its response, which of course would happen in the natural course, and we've been waiting for it, and now it's filed. But they also sent out Doug Anderson, a spokesperson for the church, to make one of the most half-assed press conferences I've ever seen in my entire life. So it's less than a minute long, and that's including his introduction of what he's going to do. So apparently what he wanted to do was to get some cameras there so he could read a statement so they could use it in the news coverage of this particular story. But this is what I think is the most fascinating thing. There's a lot of interesting things, and we're going to get to them, believe me, but I think this is the most fascinating, because what I want you to do is that I want you to take a look at this, okay? This clip, which I'm going to play for you, and listen to what it says. Now, here are the words. Bill, can you read the words there? It's quoted there. It's one thing to read the words. It's another thing to see the clip. But if you could read the words first.
Absolutely. So in a brief appearance Thursday, a spokesman shared the church's position. Quote, "The church has always acknowledged Mr. Dehlin's First Amendment right to criticize the church. And this case is not about preventing people from using the word Mormon," said church spokesman Doug Anderson. He continues, "It concerns the use of church-protected names, images, and design elements, which in collective create confusion when it comes to knowing whether the content is affiliated with the church," unquote.
Can I just say right now, that's complete horseshit. That's not at all what it's about. And you know how you can tell it is about the name? Because you'll see the image there of the name that the church in mediation was trying to get John to adopt. This was the church's proposed name for his show. It's the Mormon Stories podcast with Dr. John Dehlin. So you tell me how it's not about the name Mormon. In fact, Doug Anderson goes on to say, after saying it's not about preventing people from using the word Mormon, right? Well, no, it's not. Clever try, Doug. It's not about preventing people from using it. It's about preventing John Dehlin or other critics of the church from using the word Mormon in the title of their podcast. That's what it's about. Did you see what he did there, Bill?
Little bait and switch, huh? A little tossing it from one thing to another.
It's a straw man. In other words, he says this case is not what everybody already knows it's not about. Yeah, but that's what it's about. It's about John Dehlin, and it's about that name Mormon, because right after he says that, said church spokesperson Doug Anderson, he goes on, "It concerns the use of church-protected names." Now, he's going to go on to other things, but wait a second. What names are you talking about?
Which names?
There's not plural names involved in this lawsuit that I know of. There's only one. It's a singular, and it's the name Mormon. So he's saying it's not about the name Mormon. It's about the name Mormon, images, and design elements. In other words, it is about the name Mormon. These guys are arguing against themselves so bad. They're in such a mess. The public is turning on them. The membership is turning on them, because more and more people can see what the church is trying to do, which is, by the way, to silence John Dehlin by suing him into bankruptcy, and at the same time smearing his character by claiming that he's the one who's trying to fool church members into believing that his website is actually affiliated with the church. What do you think of that, Bill? Do you think that's likely?
Yeah, yes, but it seems like what they're trying to say is it is the collective of all of them, right? Like if it was just him saying Mormon Stories, we have no lawsuit. If it was just them using an image, okay, we got to hash that out. Maybe they got to pay some sort of little fine, but okay, we move on. What the church seems to be saying here is that it's all of these things added together. But when you read Dr. Dehlin's response to their original papers. I don't know anyone that sees the strength of the church's argument on practically every single one of those.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. The church is going to get its butt kicked in court. And in the meantime, it's getting its butt kicked in the court of public opinion. So the church takes this unprecedented move of having Doug Anderson, a paid employee of the church, to come out and say what it is that you already read, Bill. But listen, and not just listen to how it's said, and watch this fellow's face as he's saying it. Because I get the feeling he's not convinced of the justice of his position.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start. First off, thank you for coming. I'm going to be brief, so I'm giving you a heads up. My name is Doug Anderson. I'm the spokesperson for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The church has always acknowledged Mr. Dehlin's First Amendment right to criticize the church. And this case is not about preventing people from using the word Mormon. It concerns the use of church-protected names, images, and design elements which in the collective create confusion when it comes to knowing whether the content is affiliated with the church. Now, this framing is closely reinforced by the church legal filing which took place today, that this is a case not about Mr. Dehlin's speech or ownership of the word Mormon, but rather preventing confusion when it comes to source and affiliation.
Even he knows it's bullshit. Can you tell that by looking at him, Bill?
He definitely doesn't seem overly confident.
I think that's nicely put. Okay, well, let's go ahead and continue with this. I'll remove this from the screen. We'll go on now. There were a number of comments when this was put up, this very clip, and only this clip, which is less than a minute long, by the way. Can you imagine a church with $300 billion in the bank has a PR person go out, they call the cameras in, apparently, I'm guessing, or did the church just film it themselves and then send it? I don't know. No, they had other cameras there because Doug Anderson had to tell them in advance that he was going to be unusually brief in his remarks. So it wasn't completely filmed on the inside. All right. But these are comments from people who watched this. Jared Vaughn says, "Hey, Rebecca, how are you doing?"
I'm back. I need to hire a teenager, obviously, some kind of tech intern. But again, I was comforted by the fact that you were first. So please proceed.
Yes. Well, maybe your pool boy can handle it. Do you think so?
I wish I had a pool boy. I need a lot of help around here.
Good cover. Good cover. Well, I'm glad you're back. So Jared Vaughn
I'm
has
back.
to say, we're talking about the Doug Anderson clip of less than a minute. And the comments, some of the comments that were made at the Salt Lake Tribune website. Jared Vaughn says, as an active believing member of the church, I recognize this lawsuit is a PR disaster for the church and a massive mistake. I collected a few comments. By the way, when I looked, which was most recently was this morning, there were quite a number of, it was around 50 some odd comments. Not one of them was favorable to the church. Now, this is the Salt Lake Tribune page, okay, but not one. Nobody even trying. Guitars Unplugged says, Dehlin made efforts to address the church's concerns. He changed his logo, removed images they claimed were copyrighted, and added his disclaimer about not being affiliated with the church to more places throughout his site and podcast. Apparently, that wasn't enough for the church. They're continuing their efforts to bully him into submission. What an embarrassment the church has become. And by the way, Bill, one of the reasons I call bullshit on this entire excuse of the church, you had mentioned that they're trying to frame the argument as it's not just the name Mormon. In fact, now they're saying it's not the name Mormon at all, apparently, right? Yeah, I think that lady's protesting too much. But they're saying it was this constellation of smaller things, each which individually might not constitute a breach, but in the collective do, right? The reason I'm saying it's bullshit is because they were mediating this. And as part of the mediation, John gave up every single one of those things except for the name Mormon. Is there anything on the list? Was there any ask the church made a mediation that John did not go through with? I think there was one about like having an audio disclaimer every 15 minutes or so. But the main one, as far as I'm concerned, was the Mormon. I mean, it's all that's left. Is there anything that I'm missing, Bill?
By the way, I'll just say, if you change everything but the name and not going to put a disclaimer every 15 minutes, why do you need a disclaimer if it's not about the name and you've changed everything else?
Mm,
You don't need a disclaimer at that point.
great point. Thanks, Bill. Rebecca, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it just went too far in mediation. Everything that was reasonable for a podcaster or a content creator to do, he did, and that was fine. But some of the things were just beyond the pale, right? Like exactly what you just said, every 15 minutes, an audio disclaimer, things in his actual logo saying, I'm not this. No one does that. Nobody would expect a content creator to do that. So it was just too much, and he had to say no.
I know I felt he went further than I would have thought he
Mhm.
should, but it's really coming back to pay dividends, I think. What it shows is that he was reasonable to a fault, and then the church decided, no, you can fix, what is it? You can fix the images, you can fix all these things, you can fix the light rays, you can fix the color, you can do everything we ask of you, but if you don't take that word Mormon out of your title, we're going to sue you. So actions speak louder than words, Doug Anderson. And that's exactly what this is about. It is about the use of the word Mormon in the title of John Dehlin's podcast, Mormon Stories. There's a few more comments we have. Simply Nature Photo says, make up your mind. You told church members they're banned from using the term Mormon, and now non-members can't use it? Thomas Irvine says, the Streisand effect is when an attempt to hide, remove, or censor information backfires. Instead of disappearing, the information gets much more public attention. I can't imagine why this person, Thomas Irvine, is taking the time to define the Streisand effect in the comments section. True Brit says, it is an abuse of power and money. Members' money, actually. Good point, huh? I do not want anything to do with a church that deals this way. It is beyond disgusting. Harold White says, how disappointing to hear a big lie. Actually, I'm kind of getting used to it. How disappointing to hear a big lie. We've already seen how Dehlin changed the Mormon Stories logo. See, it's orange now. It has been orange since Dehlin changed it to show good faith during mediation. $300 billion, and you still can't come up with anything better than complaining about a logo that no longer exists. See, he changed it all, remember? This guy knows. Here's a radical idea that would bring folks back to church. Try being honest. Blue Dragon says, what completely utter BS. See, I was just quoting Blue Dragon. What completely utter BS. They are targeting him because they want to silence him. See, everybody can see this. And the church, in trying to say it's something other than what it obviously is just adding lying to its list of sins. Right On says, much ado when the intent is clearly to censor criticism. See, right on is right on. As a past member of the LDS Church, I have the right to share my story, my experiences with the church, even if you think it might cause confusion, which is just the silliest excuse. And it really is, isn't it? Cascadian says, let's all go and watch or listen to Mormon Stories to find out if the claims of the church spokesman are in fact true and valid. Is it really about confusion? How long do you have to listen to Mormon Stories to know it's not a product of the LDS Church? And how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Oh, Jasmine weighed in on this. And by weigh in, I mean carried the church's water. She, I think she plays a little bit of, we're going to play this. This is from her shorts on YouTube, I think. So Jasmine Rappley, it's Jasmine without the E at the end. And she is a tool for the church, and she'll prove it here. But she even has the orange thing. Isn't it funny? She's got the orange Mormon Stories and the orange church up there.
By the way, can I just jump in and say,
Yeah.
We've already showed this. The church has so many logos using so many colors, no matter what color you use, purple, blue, sky blue, red, teal, green. The church has a logo with that color. What colors am I allowed to use, LDS Church? Which ones can I use?
None, apparently. And I think that orange Jesus is from the Come Follow Me materials, so they have different colors of their logo, which signify different usages or different categories. I get it. It makes sense. But don't be holding it up against an orange stories. Hey, John, that's an idea. Just call it orange stories and everybody will be happy. Okay. And orange is my favorite color. I had an orange before the show. But don't hold up the orange Jesus Come Follow Me logo against the new orange Mormon Stories logo, the one that John changed at the church's request to a different color from blue in order to comply in mediation. Don't do that and try and show that Mormon Stories is copying the church there. Okay, so we got this. This is about an hour. No, it's just going to seem like an hour. It's actually a minute and 45 seconds or so. This is about twice as long as Doug Anderson. So let's see what
the church's lawsuit against Mormon Stories has never just been about using the word Mormon or criticizing the church, despite what Mormon Stories and others have recently been alleging. Two nonprofits recently filed separate amicus briefs in support of Mormon Stories, asking for the court to dismiss the church's case, and the church has just responded with their own filing and official statement. So the briefs seem to allege that the church should not weaponize trademark law to stop people from using the word Mormon, because Mormon is a broader term to describe things other than just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So this is suppressing criticism and suppressing free speech. But this lawsuit has never just been about the word Mormon. It has always been about brand confusion, because many elements of the Mormon Stories branding collectively have caused people to be confused about whether this critical podcast is coming from the church. At this point, there are hundreds of receipts of people saying that they were confused by the branding. And John Dehlin himself even seems to admit on his own show that it was partly his intention to confuse people. So stating it is not immediately apparent how someone could be confused comes across as disingenuous. But to me, this seems intentional, because by focusing on just the word Mormon, they can present as this victim of free speech infringement, even though the case is arguing something entirely different. The church in their recent statement made clear that they have always acknowledged Mr. Dehlin's right to the First Amendment. Mr. Dehlin can criticize the church as he chooses, and he can use Mormon in connection with his podcast. So to claim this is just about the word Mormon or claim it's about suppressing criticism is simply just not accurately representing this case. For a full breakdown of the recent filings, I found this article from Desert News helpful.
Yes, for a full breakdown, please look at the church's newspaper. Nothing says I'm a tool like that, Jasmine. By the way, I wasn't sure if her words were matching her mouth, if there was a lag, but I don't know if you guys saw it. The problem is I can never tell with Jasmine anyway. Was there a lag for you guys?
I didn't notice it, but
okay. Well, let us know if you saw it out there, at least in the live chat. Okay. Maybe it was me. Maybe my eyes were lagging my ears. So what we have was that. Any comments from you, Rebecca, about what Jasmine had to say?
Yeah, a lot of people sent this to me. A lot of people were incensed. But again, as you say, she's towing the party line, kind of clarifying what Doug Anderson said very briefly. And I rarely comment on her shorts, but I did have to say something here. And I said, your prophet has told you to stay away from the word Mormon. That's all you need to know. As soon as you see that word Mormon and you've been staying away for 8 years, you should not go anywhere near it. So if you're a faithful Mormon and you're following the prophet, you do not go near Mormon Stories. And that's it. There's no confusion. None at all. In fact, John did all the members a favor by 20 years ago calling it Mormon Stories. They know right up front on every bit of his logo and branding that this is not for faithful LDS who follow the prophet. So for all of those people that were confused, you were not following your prophet. You went somewhere where you saw the word Mormon. So it's on you. But yeah, it's extremely frustrating. And the gaslighting is incredible that I think even active members are noticing that. And those were some of the comments you were reading, and more than that. They're noticing it and just saying, okay, that's enough.
I think the first clue for anybody who happens to stumble in there thinking it is a church production is that, it's mildly interesting. So it's obviously not the church. That should be the first clue. Yeah. Hey, this is keeping my attention. This must not be from the church. What were your thoughts, Bill, about Jasmine?
yeah, I was just going to say, she put a bunch of comments up on the screen, and she explained that there appears to be hundreds of people who have expressed confusion at confusing Mormon stories for the Mormon Church. If we go back in time prior to this whole debacle, we can show that there are moments where Mormons come on to your work, my work, John Dehlin's work, Mormonish, and they clearly know. They've articulated, hey, everyone, don't trust Mormon Sunday school because it's clearly not representative of the church because it uses the word Mormon. We can show lots of those kinds of comments. My understanding is almost all or all of the comments she put up on the screen came after the church made mention of this problem. And any time the LDS Church asks its members to do something such as state that steeple theology has always been around, Mormons will step forward and they will gaslight the entire world by pretending the problem always existed behind them. And I'm telling you, this seems like another clear example of that, because Jasmine, if you're going to put comments up on the screen, you should only be allowed to use ones that were, and there should be plenty of them. If this was a real problem, there should be plenty of them before the lawsuit was filed. Just like we can show lots of comments from people, again, Mormon Sunday School is a great example. There's several of them just on that one alone, where people say, I know for sure this guy's not Mormon because he uses the word Mormon. We can show the opposite is true prior to the lawsuit. What happens once the lawsuit's filed, Mormons are always going to do what Mormons do, and that's make the church look good and do what the church asks. You've got to do better than that.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the steeple doctrine. You're absolutely right, Bill, that it's one of those cases where they want to retrofit this. And as I understand, and I think that's why faithful members are even going, okay, that's too far, like they did with the steeple doctrine. And as I understand it, even these examples of confusion, late dated, right? The examples read like this. I logged on and I thought for a minute it was from the church. Then I knew right away it wasn't. All of their own examples, even in the filing, are people that were there for a second and then instantly recognized. And you're absolutely right about all of our content. We have tons of comments that say, oh, you're not representing the church. I can tell. I could pull those up right now. So could you. So could all of us. So yeah, it's infuriating, actually.
I wonder where they got those hundreds of people. It's possible they got them from the Jacob Hansen School for the Mentally Challenged. I suppose. They're still open for business. So here is the actual filing from the church, which I read through. And I just want to make a few notes as we go along. This will not take too long. Like I said, I think the most interesting part of it is the part that is not about the lawsuit or about the law. So here's the introduction, okay? This covers what they're going to say, basically. This case is not about silencing criticism. No, it's just about taking a podcast away from a vocal critic. You see? That's what it's about. This case is not about silencing criticism. The church's claims do not target the content of defendant's speech at all. No, they're not targeting his content. They're just targeting him and his podcast. Nor is it about ownership or control of the word Mormon. Yeah, they'll contradict that idea even within the pages of this response. Once again, this is the church's response to the motion to dismiss. Church's response was filed last Thursday, August 20th. The church made this clear in its complaint. Rather, this case is about eliminating the confusion. The church made this clear in its complaint. I'm not sure who they're talking to unless it's the public, who seems to have the wrong idea about what this lawsuit is really about, that it looks like it's really about bullying a critic into submission. Rather, this case is about eliminating the confusion caused by defendants mimicking the church's trademarks and using its copyrighted images without permission. No, that's not what this case is about. And saying it doesn't make it so. I mean, it's so patently obvious by this point that that's not what this case is about. I trust that a federal judge can see that as easily as I can. I mean, I'm just a small town lawyer and I can see it plain as day. Mr. Dehlin can criticize the church as he chooses, and he can use Mormon in connection with his podcast. Okay, so why did you file the lawsuit then? I mean, did they just give it away? Because they're going to pretend that he still hasn't changed all the other components that he's changed. And he had changed prior to their filing the lawsuit. It is a fiction. It's like they're talking about church history in a court filing. They're making it up, and it is called gaslighting the world. I saw that hashtag, gaslight the world, right, Bill?
Right. Gaslight the world. That's more than just Christmas time. That's all year long in Mormonism.
Yes, it is. Mormon makes Christmas every day. But federal law prohibits defendants from pilfering the church's copyrighted images or using its trademarks in ways that are, pilfering. See, they have to accuse, they're making this lawsuit up. This law is based upon a pretext, okay? But in order to have a lawsuit, they also have to say that John Dehlin did something bad. And so what he did that was bad is they're alleging that he is intentionally taking the trademark images of the church to use in his podcast so as to fool unwary people, including unwary Mormons, from going on to his show and actually thinking that what he's saying is produced and sanctioned by the church. But what they said here was, Mr. Dehlin can criticize the church as he chooses, and he can use Mormon in connection with his podcast. Like I say, I don't know why we're here then. He agreed to everything else. But federal law prohibits defendants from pilfering the church's copyrighted images or using its trademarks in ways that are likely to cause people to believe that defendants or their content are associated with the church. There is none of that. Even if there were, John Dehlin got rid of it all before they filed the lawsuit. So what is this case really about? It's about what they're adamant it's not about. They're adamant it's not about the use of the word Mormon. It is about the use of the word Mormon. They're adamant it's not about silencing criticism. That's the opening line of their brief. And I think it was the opening line of Doug Anderson. Of course, that's exactly what it's about. It's what they deny most strongly and vociferously that it's about. The First Amendment protects defendants' speech. It does not license them to appropriate the church's marks and images. A clever line, but I'm sorry. He gave them all up. Guys, that's the truth. Why are you still trying to pretend you live in this alternate universe when you've already been called out on it by the answer that John filed to your complaint, where you avoided telling these things to the court? And we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second too. Okay, so this is page 71. Defendants also assert that the church's trademark claims should be dismissed based on laches. Laches is a fact-intensive affirmative defense that generally cannot be resolved on a motion to dismiss. Well, when he's been using it for 20 years or 21 years before you file it, maybe it is something you can rule on a motion to dismiss. Guys, just saying, it's kind of an extreme case, isn't it? Especially when you couple in the fact that the church pushed back and said, we're not using the word Mormon anymore. And if you do, it's a victory for Satan. Oh my gosh. Can you push back against the term any more than that? But now the underlined part, the part I underlined, the church intends to prove that defendants' infringement became increasingly more blatant over time until the church had no choice but to take action to protect its intellectual property. This is an important line that they put in here, and it's like they're making it up as they go along, because that's the whole thing. It's been 20 years. I'm surprised they didn't allege this in the original lawsuit, because it seemed pretty obvious that it's been 20 years that John's been using it. I guess they thought if they don't really mention how long it's been, that the other side won't know and clarify it for the court. So now they're going to say that it's become increasingly bad, his misuse of church trademarks over the years. And so now that's why they waited till now to take action, which when they actually spell it out is the same thing as saying he became popular to a certain degree. And that's what they put in their response, because so many people are listening to him now. So popularity really is the basis for their lawsuit, according to this filing by the church. I don't think it's why they waited so long. I think that part is not true. I think it's because they're trying to, well, actually, I think it is because he's so popular. That's why they want to beat him into submission. I would take that line from their brief and hammer it home in argument on this motion, I think. I did not put it up here, and I apologize for that. But that's what they're saying. See, the problem is that even if this were true, and I don't think it's true, I know he's gotten more popular. But even if it's true that people are being confused by the logo, they're not. That is a fiction. That's a lie. It never happened. Okay. But even if it had, they went to mediate with John Dehlin. He got rid of all the offending stuff. And they're saying it's not about the word Mormon. So why are you filing a lawsuit? To destroy John Dehlin. Okay, here's another one. Now, apparently, they still thought it was a great idea to put this, it's like a liner you see with all the different blues and the different logos. I mean, we've been over this before. They just took a bunch of blue ones from their website where they have a multitude of different colors, including orange, right, Bill? But a bunch of them are blue. So they took the blue ones and put it in a line with Mormon Stories, which isn't even blue anymore. But once again, they're going to pretend like it's blue still. The church will prove that many have, in fact, been confused by defendants' infringement of the church's intellectual property. Yeah. No, you're not going to do that. There aren't any. They encounter Mormon Stories. Now listen, because here they give away the game again. They encounter Mormon Stories and begin to consume its content. They start listening. They start watching, believing it contains church-affiliated material. Only to what? Only to discover it is not what they were seeking. Well, no shit, Sherlock. So if you're dumb enough to think that Mormon Stories is from the Mormon Church, all you have to do is listen for a couple of minutes and you'll realize it's not. So where's your lawsuit now? The only basis for your lawsuit is trademark confusion. You just said that even if people did go on there in the past, that they don't say immediately, right? But we know that that's what it is. Because if it took several episodes for them to figure it out, they would have said it. It was within a few minutes. We know it because they don't specify the time. Only to discover it is not what they were seeking. Your thoughts about this, Bill, and then Rebecca.
I think I've already said my piece about the logos. Again, first off, when did John Dehlin's podcast start? 2005.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go back to 2005, see what the church is using. But even if it has only a blue logo, again, there's only so many colors that people are using. It's not like we're going, well, I want it to be a mix of green and orange. Like there's really 8-10 colors that people are going to pick from to do a logo in. Are you really saying like you own one of those 8 colors? If Mormon's not the problem, I don't get it. As you pointed out, he's changed everything else. And the other things he didn't change besides the name are only a problem if you need him to change the name.
If the only thing that it can possibly be about, they're saying it's not about, which is what the church is now saying, then there can be no reason for this lawsuit except to bully John Dehlin into silence. Rebecca?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And if you look at the logo second from the right, Disney should sue the church. That's the Disney logo. They have a castle just like that on blue, looks just like that. So this logo argument is absolutely ridiculous, but I feel right there they just damned their case. They go on the site, they start watching, only to discover it is not what they were seeking, right? These are not the droids you're looking for. There it is. There is no confusion. And like I said, all the comments that they even included in their filing say exactly that. We were confused for a second. We went on and then instantly knew, you know, if the barrier of the word Mormon didn't stop them for some reason, which it should have, because that has been drummed into everybody's brain for 8 years. Just the content alone, you know, which are the stories, interesting, right? Few minutes, they're going to realize, okay, this probably isn't from the church. So I don't understand how somebody could put that in their filing. That seems to answer the whole question. Should we dismiss it? Yes, here it is. I don't know. You tell me, RFM, why would they have stated something that supports the other side, basically?
I'm becoming convinced that Curtin McConkie is staffed with the people who graduated at the bottom of their class from J. Reuben Clark's law school.
It seems that way. I want to say one more thing, by the way. Which one of these logos is the church claiming that John's logo is similar to? Exactly. Because what it's doing is it's overwhelming you with all of its blue logos. Again, it has other color logos as well. But it's playing a game where it puts up 10 logos that it has all of its blue ones. And it says, look, John Dehlin's logo gets kind of lost in the midst of those. But it's different than every one of those logos. And they're not making a claim that this logo's like this logo of ours. They're saying we have 100 logos, but of our 10 blue logos, John's blue logo seems to get lost in the midst of them.
Yes. Out of all of it, we've got hundreds of logos, but out of that small subset of our logos, which are the blue logos, John Dehlin's logo fits right in.
But if you put his logo individually by each of those other
Mhm.
circles, none of them match. Does his logo look like that church? No. Does it look like the leaf? No. Does it look like the arrow? No. Do you see what I mean? It does not look like any. So yes,
I
this
do.
is kind of very deceptive the way they've put it up here.
And one more thing, if there isn't a problem with Mormon, what they're saying is the problem is the blue, and it's not even the exact same blue of any of the other logos that's being used.
Can I just say that my experience has been that in motions of this kind, okay, not specifically trademark law, but motions in front of a judge or on appeal that really don't have a solid issue where something was wrong or reversible, and that they then cast their net wide and say, yeah, but there was all these little things that happen and the cumulative effect is reversible. That just about never wins. Just saying. But now I've got to read this next part though, because apparently John Dehlin open foot inserted mouth, or vice versa. The first would be more interesting to watch. I think that would go viral. Here's the next part, and this is intentional, they say. In a 2022 Mormon Stories episode, a guest tells Mr. Dehlin he began listening because he believed Mormon Stories was church affiliated. John Dehlin responds, "That was not why I named it that," but then confesses, "Okay, maybe it was a little bit why I named it that." These are the kind of things that lawyers look at and they just close their eyes and they shake their head and they think, did you really have to say that?
Can I just say that's a ridiculous argument? Of course, he's going to be discussing Mormon content. Of course, his audience that he's trying to attract are people that are interested for whatever reason in Mormonism, questioning or have left or whatever. I don't think that means anything, actually. I think it just means I called it Mormon because that's what I discuss. Just like we have called our podcast some form of Mormon because that's what we discuss. And that's the kind of audience,
Okay.
people that are interested are going to gravitate toward us.
Okay, Rebecca, I think I understand your position. May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay. If that is the case, right, then why is it, and I'm going to say if this is correct, I haven't listened to the entire thing. I saw John Dehlin saying it, mouthing it in the background of Jasmine's video, right? All I'm going to say is that apparently John Dehlin is the one who said this himself, was that the reason that he changed it a little bit after saying that's not why he named it that was so that somebody who would think that Mormon Stories was church affiliated.
Yeah, but if that's really a direct quote from him, I don't think it means that.
Okay.
In my opinion. I don't think
Okay.
so.
Bill, what do you think?
We run a lot of podcasts, you and I.
Mm.
Mormonism Live, Radio Free Mormon, Mormon Discussion. Here, the three of us do the Mormon Newscast. None of us have ever used Latter-day Saints for the reason that signals to me the church. And we have all chosen Mormon because we discuss Mormonism mostly within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we've covered a whole host of issues outside of the faith as well. And Mormon to me was always the easiest way to capture the whole umbrella of people who go online, and when a Latter-day Saint or a Community of Christ or an FLDS, when they're looking for something on the 20,000 foot view of this religion tied back to Joseph Smith in all of its sects, it is, in fact, Mormon is the right word.
Yep.
And it's the reason why all of us, Mormon Stories, I'm trying to think offhand of other folks. There was the Mormon History podcast. There was
Mormon Land.
Yeah, Mormon Land. Everybody uses Mormon, and we all use Mormon because it, in one word, captures everything from Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon forward.
Well, let me go back to this then. And I will just say, I think this, Obviously, this is the church writing it. By the way, I hope the guy who caught this or the gal who caught this gets a raise. This may get them past a summary judgment motion or a motion to dismiss. We'll have to see. I still don't think it comes down to little bitty things like this. I think it comes down to 20 years of Joseph Smith using the Mormon Stories trademark or John Dehlin. And it comes down to that and the church pushing Mormon away with both hands. I would have said, if I were writing this, I think it would be more accurate to say, if they're quoting John Dehlin, that was not why I named it that, but then jokes. Okay, maybe it was a little bit why I named it that. It's a joke.
The word confess. Yeah, see, that right there is very leading, I think. I mean, all of us sit down to name our podcast and go, what are we going to call this? We want to attract a Mormon all spectrum audience, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to call it Blue Oak Tree Podcast. No, I'm going to come up with something that has the word Mormon in it. And I believe exactly like what Bill said, that was what he was trying to say. I'm trying to be there for my audience. I'm trying to be found by never Mormons, people who are interested in Mormonism, nuanced Mormons, post Mormons, maybe Mormons. You are Mormon.
Very good. Okay, Blue Oak Tree is yours. Orange Stories is mine.
Yeah, that's what
Do you
I'm
have one that
saying.
you want, Bill?
It's ridiculous.
People get creative, the Leahona podcast or the Urim and Thummim pod. You can get creative and use these little tangent words in Mormonism, but you'll have a small audience, especially on this side of things. The way you get Mormons of all types to listen to it is you use the word Mormon. Again, you could get creative, but I think you'd end up sort of stacking the deck against yourself if you did so.
Yeah, and I'm going to prove that in a minute in my next story, which is exactly what you just said, Bill. So there's proof for what we're talking about.
Well, I'll try and get through this thing quickly.
Oh,
No, it's okay. But this is from whatever page it's from. But once again, they're using Mormon Stories in a circle and Mormon Stories in a square, which are not being used now by Mormon Stories, and doing it as if they have. Now, notice how they word this language here. Remember, in their opening complaint, they did not give any of the timelines at all. They did not show that in a number of cases, like I think with the light rays, that John Dehlin was using that even before the church was. All they were doing was insinuating that it must have been derivative and trademark infringement on John's part. In other words, everything he did that looked like anything the church had came after the church, which is not true. So they got called on that. And here's what they're going to do about it. I was waiting to see what they're going to do. Let's see how impressive you think this is. Defendants, it's the first line underlined in the upper paragraph. Defendants' logos have used stylized lettering. All caps, a distinct font, light rays, and a distinct circular square symbol. Did you see the tense? Have used. They're admitting they don't do it anymore without admitting they don't do it anymore. That's why they phrase that sentence that way. And now, if you look at, there is a footnote. Defendants' logos have used, it gets its own footnote, a number 2. And if we go down there to that footnote, here's what they're going to say. All right. Let me just check this out on my next slide so I can read it better. Yeah, they're going to bury it in a footnote. Where else would they bury it? Here we go. After plaintiffs, that's the church, gave defendants, that's John Dehlin, after they gave them written notice of their infringement of plaintiffs' trademarks and copyrights, that's not the lawsuit. This is a written notice. This is what commenced mediation. This is what they gave them in November, and they filed in April. So the church gave John Dehlin written notice of John Dehlin's infringement of the church's trademarks and copyrights. John Dehlin made some alterations to their branding. They're going to admit it for the first time in a footnote in their answer, when in their complaint they didn't mention it at all. So defendants made some alterations to their branding, including to the color of their logo and the light rays design. In other words, they took it off before you filed the lawsuit. Other infringing elements remain. Oh, what are they? The word Mormon. And defendants have not taken responsibility for past infringement. That's not what a lawsuit is about. What are you talking about? Have not taken response. He was changing it. He did change it. But he wasn't taking, what does changing it sound like if not taking responsibility, or at least agreeing that he would be a good neighbor and accede to a demand that he could see was meaningful to you? Other infringing elements remain, and defendants have not taken responsibility for past infringement or given any assurance that they will not return. By the way, this is where you can tell there's a lot of work that went into this footnote too in writing it, because there's not a lot of typos in this, but here's the one. Here's one. Or given any assurance that they will not resume. And they drop will not return to their use of prior infringing elements, or that they will not resume their use. Okay, so they left the return there when they put resume in, I think. So in other words, they haven't taken responsibility other than taking down all of these things and changing them at your request, church, before you file the lawsuit. And they haven't promised you they will not resume their prior. Did you ask them? No, of course you didn't. This is where they are at, okay? They're at the point where now they're having to admit that they misrepresented fundamentally the nature of the lawsuit in their complaint. They got called on it in the answer, and now in their response to the motion to dismiss, they're showing that they know all this stuff, and without admitting that they were trying to put one over on the court. Now, your thoughts about the footnote. If you have anything, let me know. If not, I'll continue.
Just that I think it's a strange thing to say they made the change, but they never assured us that they'd never go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a strange thing for John to do without being asked to do it.
And they're not even done with mediation. From John's point of view, obviously they changed their mind. The church did.
I'm sure if they said, would you submit something that says you will not return to the old logo, I'm sure John would go, sure. Like,
yes.
Who cares? Like, okay.
The more the church shows you things and tells you, right? Tells you that it's not about this or it's not about that. The church is showing you all these things in order to try and keep you from understanding that it is all about the name and all about silencing John. Because they're saying it's all these things that it's not. That's what I was trying to say. I can't remember the word for it, at least not in English. But what I'm talking about is this idea that they're putting all this stuff together and saying this is what it's about when it's not, because that's in the past. And that got changed before they filed the lawsuit. This is where they pretend to justify that while still tacitly acknowledging that they did know about the timeline when they filed the case. Under Section 4, it says plaintiffs have provided sufficient notice for the copyright infringement claims. They say, but defendants' contention here that plaintiffs, the church, have not identified when the infringements were first published or how long any image or whether any particular use was removed before suit is a far, far cry from Boyd, the case of Boyd, and the notice pleading standard established by the rules. See how they avoid answering the question? The defendant's contention that you, Mr. Lawyer, writing this brief on behalf of the church, you have not identified when the infringements were first published or how long any image or whether any particular use was removed before suit. You knew they were all removed. And this is their way of avoiding it by saying, oh, something else. It's a far cry from Boyd and the notice pleading standard established by the rules. Now, the only reason I have a few of these other things in here is just for interest. This is on page 31. Although plaintiffs gathered evidence of the infringements in the several months leading up to the filing of the lawsuit. Now, this is the church gathering evidence of the infringements, their copyright infringements, which I think John Dehlin agreed to. I mean, using images that the church had copyright to, it's a copyright violation, but he was taking them down and was continuing to take them down even as this lawsuit was filed. So although plaintiffs gathered evidence of the infringements in the several months leading up to the filing of the lawsuit, defendants' content is not static. Okay, John Dehlin's content not static. Yeah, he's adding podcasts. Sure. Some asserted images may have been removed or changed. You know damn well they were. Don't give me this May bullshit, you hack lawyers. You know they have been. Some asserted images may have been removed or changed, and because of those potential changes, plaintiffs may be unable to determine the precise date each infringement began. Regardless, the infringements were ongoing and occurring leading up to when the complaint was filed. Now, did you notice the tense they put that last sentence in, Rebecca, since you're the librarian among us? Regardless, the infringements were ongoing and occurring leading up to when the complaint was filed. That's them admitting that he changed them before they filed the complaint. Mormon is pretty much all that is left of the lawsuit. This is a thought slide for me. And yet the church is saying it isn't about Mormon. Well, if it isn't about Mormon, why did the church file a lawsuit? Well, here's a church in the lawsuit admitting, I think it's 3 places, that it really is about the word Mormon. Let's see if they're as funny to you. This is from page 16. Most importantly, plaintiffs plausibly allege, that's the church, they're saying that we have plausibly alleged that defendants use Mormon Stories as a source identifying trademark.
Most importantly, it's not about Mormon, but the most important reason we're suing John is he uses the word Mormon.
Can I say that that may be what it appears to mean, but I think what it means that is for purposes of the argument they're making and addressing that they're talking about, that's what is most important about it. So this is a case, I think, of them answering a different question and inadvertently saying what the truth is. Most importantly, plaintiffs plausibly allege that defendants use Mormon Stories as a source identifying trademark. Okay, so is it the stories that you're complaining about? No, it's Mormon. Say it with me. Mormon. Doug Anderson. Mormon. That's what it's about.
Is it referring there to his content? Because the content literally is Mormon stories. Stories told Mormons who have left, Mormons who have stayed, Mormons who have belonged to other branches of the church. It is full of Mormon stories. I don't understand how that statement makes any sense.
I don't think it does. Here's another footnote. Oh, this is about the ACLU and the EFF's amicus briefs, where basically they're saying, hey, judge, don't listen to any new arguments that they came up with because you're not supposed to. Now, this is really funny, by the way. Let me read it first. The ACLU's amicus brief argues that the word Mormon is not a source identifier and that uses of the term are not source identifying without more. Plaintiffs are not arguing that defendants' use of the word Mormon standing alone is a source identifier. The relevant question under Jack Daniels is whether defendants use their Mormon Stories marks as source identifiers. Defendants plainly use the word Mormon Stories marks as source identifiers. So once again, even though they're talking about a legal doctrine and source identifiers and all this stuff, which makes it difficult to understand the context, is very clear that they're saying, that John Dehlin and Mormon Stories use Mormon Stories as a source identifier, and they got a problem with that. And this may be the last one, I hope so. Given defendants' clear use of Mormon Stories as a trademark, it sounds to me like it's about the word Mormon. And I think they're admitting it over and over again in their brief while denying it in the introduction and to the public through their spokesperson. And this is a thought that came to me last night. So there's no guarantee it makes any sense today, but I was thinking about this and I was reading comments that people had, and I was just going, you can mucky muck with this all day long as a lawyer, but the bottom line is there is no source confusion. There is no confusion on the part of any cohort that Mormon Stories is affiliated with the Mormon Church. And most people figure that out before listening to any. But when they do listen, they figure it out within a couple of minutes, and go on their merry way. Apparently, at least if they don't want to be listening to what Mormon Stories is, because they know this isn't from the church. So I don't see a lawsuit here. I see a dismissal looming in the future. But this was the thought. All the facts that make this lawsuit so bad for the church show something else. I mean, facts like John Dehlin using Mormon Stories for 20 years, the church eschewing Mormon, etc. Those basic, that spine of the facts in this case, which are so bad for the church. These are horrible facts for the church, I say. But they show not only that they will lose. This is the way I've been approaching this case, is these facts are really good for John Dehlin and Mormon Stories, and they're really bad for the church. But I think they show more than just who has the better case. They show there was never any brand confusion to begin with. This is a pretext. This entire lawsuit against John Dehlin and Mormon Stories is a pretext, which means the church is trying to sue John Dehlin into oblivion over a pretext. What they know good and well is a pretext. I think they've demonstrated pretty much on their own with their inadvertent admissions in their filings and that incredible performance by Doug Anderson. And the church has proven it through these very facts and these very filings. And I said, let that sink in. The church has a crappy case because there is no brand confusion, and there never has been any brand confusion. This was the pretext they came up with to get John. And now, I think we're going to close with this. I hope we're going to close with this because I wanted to make a clip. This is from our newscast. This is March 30th, 2026. This is a couple of weeks prior to the lawsuit being filed on John Dehlin. And what had just happened here is that it was in the news that they were mediating, and the Mormon Church had just broken off mediation, apparently. And they were wondering what's going to happen. Well, lawsuit looked like it was going to happen. Here's the reason I'm asking you to play this clip, okay? Because this is me, before the church filed a lawsuit, predicting not only that they would file a lawsuit, but they would do it in spite of the fact it was the dumbest decision they could possibly make.
RFM?
I think for all the stated reasons that the facts could not line up better for John Dehlin and Mormon Stories, for them to be able to continue to use the word Mormon and for the church not to disallow that under copyright or trademark law, because the church has slept on its rights and has publicly eschewed them and everything that you've already said. And meanwhile, John Dehlin has been chugging along like the little engine that could for 21 years as Mormon Stories, and they haven't said a word, which will be factored into how much they think this is important and how they have protected this, because it's not like John Dehlin was off in a corner somewhere. Everybody knew about Mormon Stories. I mean, my gosh, it's been a decade since they excommunicated the man. It'd be hard to say that they didn't know about a guy they excommunicated. So I think that the church is reaching out in mediation to try and get from John Dehlin what they are worried they will not get if they go to court. And now the worst decision the church could make, I think, would be to file a lawsuit against John Dehlin and Open Stories Foundation, which is why I predict that that is exactly what they will do.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. So on one hand, you're right. Like, let's watch them make the stupid move. But on the other hand, if they don't, then they're sort of nodding to the fact that you're right. We don't really want to fight this. We think there's a good chance we would lose.
Hubris is something that the church is acquainted with. Yes, some prophets actually can see around corners, I guess. But that's the story. It only took an hour to get through. But we've got Rebecca, and that's the important thing before we get to the next one. So I think we already talked about it. Are you both ready to continue? If you have anything else you want to say.
You are a prophet, RFM. You are a prophet. And I think it now just looks like a big corporation suing a little guy who's trying to do what he does. And I think that's why even faithful members are looking at it and going, This is a bad look eventually. And I do have to think that maybe some upper leadership are just surrounded by yes men. Was there nobody that said this is not a good idea? Is there nobody that
Not a
pushes
one.
back or
No.
gives any kind of real advice? Are they all just yes men? That's
Yes.
the only explanation I can come up with, but it's such a bad look. Even faithful members are noticing.
I expect if you want to keep your job, you're a yes man or a yes woman.
Yeah.
All right. So this next story is going to be something really interesting. I'm out of segues, Bill. But is this from you?
This is me. This kind of relates. And in fact, right here, my first little meme is guess I didn't see around the SEO corner so well, did I? Of course, that's President Nelson in 2018 coming up with, do not use nicknames. Let's ditch the word Mormon completely. And this supports exactly what Bill was saying. Even the LDS Church knows that nobody can find content from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints without a little help from the word Mormon. And this is a faithful influencer who pretty much says it out loud. This was picked up by our good friend, Generally Unquotable. She found this, and I just thought it was extremely telling. So this is a popular LDS influencer. She's a bishop's wife, and she does all kinds of fun podcasting and talking about different church topics. And in this one, her topic was, she just mentioned the most successful Mormons I know have this one quality, right? Do you see that she said the word Mormon? Very surprising for a bishop's wife and faithful influencer. So somebody in her comments called her out and said, why would you call us Mormons when we are supposed to call ourselves the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a bishop's wife? You should know that, right? So one of her viewers is astounded that she is openly using the word Mormon in her content. So she writes back, and again, she has great content. It's really well done, but she writes back, I do know that. And as a content creator who has talked with the communications department of the church, okay, so she's in contact with the communications department because she's a very popular LDS podcaster who a lot of people watch. Since I've talked with the communications department of the church, there is a strategy to this. There's a strategy to using the word Mormon. I think more recently, the strategy is we got to reclaim this word because we're suing John Dehlin over the word, right? But she goes on to explain it's a key word, right? Most of the world still calls us that, Mormons. So if they can find uplifting content under that keyword, Mormon, content that actually shares truth, that's a win. In my caption, I also use Latter-day Saint, and you'll notice that I will continue to use the correct name of the church, hopefully using all of this, Mormon and Latter-day Saint, will help the world understand a little better. So that's why I made that initial meme right there. President Nelson, I don't know why when you're in your hundreds, you don't know about SEO. But obviously all the content creators, we've talked about this before, still use hashtag Mormon, hashtag Mormon Church. They still use that because nobody is going to be able to find their content. President Nelson may have thought, okay, the members will be able to always Google the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but the rest of the world, it's still Mormons that they're going to type in to try to get information. So they're still holding on to that word. Individual content creators are still using it. And as she pointed out, she talked over this strategy with the church communications department. So I just thought that was really interesting. What do you
Well, I
guys
think it's interesting and impressive that she's met with the church communications department. On the other hand, I have met with the church SCMC department. Bill, what are your thoughts?
She says she talked to the communications department, but I'm curious who initiated that conversation. My hunch is that as an influencer, the church has reached out to a lot of influencers and informed them of a strategy that you need to start using both terms to conflate the two. And she seems to indicate as much by her second comment. Number two, there are two strategies. If you're the Mormon church in the 2000s, 2010s, you realize that you've been really dishonest about your history. You've played a lot of games that you shouldn't have. You've not done things in a way that were really ethical. And you've got people left and right discovering troubling information and walking away from your church. So you get two strategies. One strategy is that you stop your members from finding the bad stuff. That seems to be the strategy they tried first. And that means you tell the members Mormon's a bad word. No one uses it. Leave it alone. It's a victory for Satan. And no Mormon wants to be doing victory laps for Satan. So it's out of the vocabulary. But that doesn't exactly work. And in the short time that was going on, just a handful of years, the church would have gotten enough feedback to know it's not working. It's not working. All we're doing is hurting the chances of potential investigators from finding us. And the members are still at even an increased rate finding the troubling information. So what's strategy number 2? You stop the bad guys from using the word Mormon. Except in this case, LDS Church, you might want to look in the mirror. And once again, I say this, you might want to ask, are we the baddies? Because you might be. So it's not going to work. And let me just see if I had any other notes here. No, I think that's good. I'm good enough on this one.
I know, but the church is the church, and we all know what the church is. But can I just give this as another example of 2 different messages the church is giving or allowing to remain in real time? So they're putting the members against each other, and one who knows what the church teaches in general conference and has taught, saying you shouldn't use the word Mormon, and this gal Becky Squire, the podcaster, says, oh, no. I have had a super secret meeting with a high level guy in the church, and they told me I'm supposed to.
Yep. So don't worry.
Why does the church do this? Are they incapable of just having one consistent message, both outside and in?
They want both, right? They want their believing members to never type in the word Mormon because of what will come up in the search results. And they want everyone else on the critical side to not use the word Mormon. And they want the public to find them whichever way they can. But when it comes to criticism, they don't want the word Mormon used.
Mm-hmm. Well, somebody came up with a clever idea, and I think it was the president of the church, that good old lawyer Dallas Oaks, who used to be a member of the Utah Supreme Court and has now become the litigator in chief of the LDS Church. Well, I think we can segue from there over to a story that is Bill's. Bill, what's up with the Deseret News and counseling? And by counseling, I mean like mental health or emotional health therapy.
Yeah, the Deseret News runs this article, 7 Signs Your Counselor, and they use the word counselor intentionally. There are both coaches and therapists in this space. For instance, Dr. Julie D. Azevedo is a therapist. Teresa and I are both coaches. And so they use the word counselor to cover both categories.
So you would be considered a counselor as well as Julie?
Yeah, they're essentially saying here, these are 7 signs that your coach or therapist may be undermining your faith. Mm-hmm. And on August 18th, the Deseret News published a perspective piece by Jacob Hess and psychology professor Jeffrey Reber.
Not Jacob Hess. He's a total hack. He's in the tank for the church and will lie like next Tuesday on their behalf. Is he doing this here?
Yeah, we've covered him before, and he is doing this again. We did an episode. Dr. Julie D. Azevedo, Teresa, and I got together. I'll show you that later.
Why can't the church find any talented people to work for them?
No, and it all ends up being a game. I ended up titling the episode "Playing Apologetics with Mental Health" because when you read this article in its totality, it becomes clear that this is an apologetic game and not an effort of health professionals trying to guide Latter-day Saints into healthy therapist. So let me just say here. So the piece is by Jacob Hess and psychology professor Jeffrey Reber. Again, is titled 7 Signs Your Counselor May Be Undermining Your Faith. The central argument is reasonable on its face. They say therapists have values and biases like everyone else. So if a therapist tells you they have no biases or no values, don't believe that. But again, nobody does that. That's a straw man argument. Okay. So they say that. They say, and ethical therapy should respect a religious client's worldview rather than quietly steering that person away from their faith. That's also true. A therapist or a coach should not start off on the onset of wanting to lead someone into a religion or lead someone out of a religion. But again, I can't think of anybody who's doing that. I'm a somatic informed trauma coach, and I see clients who come to me in their faith crisis, and they have conversations with me about the harm the church is doing to them. And I help them add maybe more meaning to what's going on. Like, for instance, I might ask questions that get them to have introspection on what kind of mechanisms the church used. But I'm not the one saying, hey, you're having a faith crisis. I know you didn't come to me saying you're having a faith crisis, but I'm going to tell everyone they're having a faith crisis. That's not how it works. Nobody's doing that. But that's what they're arguing in this. So I'll point out some of these. The authors identify 7 potential warning signs that include, and this is the bad thing, these are signs that your therapist or coach might be undermining your faith. So therapists who claim to be neutral or value-free, doesn't happen. Therapists or coaches who encourage clients to prioritize an authentic self over religious duties. Now, that might happen, but that happens from the point of view of going like, someone comes to you and they go, I'm just burnt out. My church asked me to do so much, and all I do is feel depressed, and I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. And I might ask them questions about why they feel so much pressure to do that. Where does that pressure come from? And so the person might end up going, I need more self-care. I need to prioritize myself over my religious duties. Treating religious authority as oppressive. Nobody does that. But what people do is they say gaslighting, manipulation, hiding history, shaming you, telling you that you have to accept any calling that's extended to you. What do you think about those kinds of requirements by a religion? Does that seem healthy to you? There might be those kinds of conversations happening. Pathologizing high demand religious commitments. In other words, treating all religious commitments as if it's a bad thing. Nobody does that. These are all straw men. Okay, so here's another one. Treating guilt and shame as inherently unhealthy. They're parsing two terms, they're conflating two terms that should be parsed out. Shame in almost all of its uses is unhealthy. Guilt is a sign that what we're doing doesn't match our portrayed values. There's a discrepancy. Guilt says, I'm doing something wrong. Shame says there's something wrong with me, and they want them both in the same bucket. Again, not an accurate depiction.
I see pathologizing high demand religious. By the way, Bill, is this a quote from the article from Jacob Hess?
Yeah, I'll show you here in the next slides. These are the signs that they say. Yes, this is their exact words at the heading of each of the 7 signs that your counselor might be undermining your faith.
Okay, then I want to say about the language of, I just want to make sure it was their language before I criticized it in the way I'm going to do. Pathologizing high demand religious commitments. Shouldn't all high demand religious commitments be pathologized?
Say more.
All I'm saying is, they don't want you to be guilt-free because that takes away the church power over you, right? So they want you to keep guilt. They want you to keep shame too, because the church uses that as well. They're a high demand religion. And so don't say anything wrong about high demand religions. Don't pathologize them. And I'm just suggesting that all high demand fundamentalist religions probably should be pathologized.
Yes and no. So yes, there are a lot of high demand religions. And the reason they're called that is because they ask a lot more of people, but it's not just that. Most high demand religions utilize things like shame, manipulation, obfuscating parts of history in order to get people to agree to commitments they wouldn't have agreed to otherwise, commitments that are requiring far and above and beyond what an average religion requires. So yes, in almost every instance I can think of the high demand religions I can name, The reason I put them in that category is because they put an unfair amount of requirements on people and trick people through certain kinds of psychological mechanisms to commit those parts of their lives to the religion. But from a therapist or coach perspective, you can't go into any situation going, just because it's a high demand religion, it is therefore bad. Nor do I know of any coach or therapist in this space that does that.
So they want to do both of those things. Thank you for that, Bill, because your insight here is invaluable. But they also want to make sure that nobody is encouraging clients to prioritize their authentic self. So in other words, incredibly, they're writing an article saying that your counselor is undermining your faith and not doing their job if they do anything that would, I don't know, impact badly on the way the church behaves itself.
Yeah. This article is written to look like they're trying to help believers be wary of bad coaches and therapists. But what they're really trying to do is inoculate believers that if they come across a therapist or coach who supports them in self-discovering that their religion is not healthy or responsible or true, that before they figure that all out, they'll get as far away from that therapist or coach as possible. And they approach it as if they're speaking generally about therapists or coaches. But as we get into this, you'll see that it's clearly about coaches or therapists who are aware of Mormonism and seem to be helpful and supportive in clients figuring out that the church is hurting them or weighing too heavily on them.
It looks like the church has come as close as I can remember to be on record that it would rather its members be Mormon than true to themselves. They'd rather they be true to the church than true to themselves. I know that's has been the fundamental doctrine, generally unspoken doctrine throughout the church's history, but this makes it really clear.
Yeah. The next one, using trauma language too broadly for ordinary religious struggles. But think about all the things that people go to a therapist within Mormonism or go to a therapist within a really unhealthy religion and the kinds of things they're saying. And of course, the religion itself goes, those are just ordinary religious struggles, right?
Yes.
The last one here, encouraging people to cut off family relationships rather than attempting reconciliation.
When the hell does that happen?
It doesn't.
Are we in Jody Hildebrandt territory? Because she was a Mormon, wasn't she?
She did that. Who else does that, by the way? Who else encourages people to cut off family relationships rather than attempting reconciliation? The church itself. D. Todd Christofferson, Amish shunning wrong, Mormon shunning A-OK good. Yes. So coaches and therapists teach their clients how to set healthy boundaries, teach clients how to get more comfortable and courageous in setting boundaries in their life. Mormons struggling with Mormonism aren't setting boundaries too soon. They're often tolerating egregious unhealthy behavior by family and so scared to set boundaries that they often are setting boundaries way super late. And I don't go into any conversation with a client and say, you know what I think? I think you need some distance between you and your dad. That would be wrong. Mm-hmm. What I do is I teach clients to notice what they're feeling. And if they voice that they want something different in a relationship, I teach them how boundaries work. And they're completely in charge of what boundaries or how they set them in their life. So every one of these is a straw man.
Do you know why I think? And this is my first blush at it, and I'll say it real quick. It's because what this is a piece that is designed to scare Mormons into not using non-Mormon counselors and to use only Mormon counselors. More than that?
More than that. By the language they use, it is clear they're trying to keep believing Mormons from having coaches and therapists who are aware of Mormonism and aware of religious trauma and are going to be helpful to their clients in coming to their own conclusion that Mormonism isn't healthy or responsible with them.
Okay, so it's sort of an unpaid ad for Mormon social services.
Yeah, and you'll see that. I'll show some of the quotes here. So importantly, the authors acknowledge that some religious environments really are abusive. They do this at the very end. They say that some environments really are abusive, that trauma-informed therapy is valuable, that boundaries can be appropriate, and good therapy can actually strengthen someone's faith. It can also lead to someone having diminished faith too, but they don't want to acknowledge that's a reasonable outcome as well. But
I could tell there was going to be a but at the end of that sentence.
yeah, but then you're right. And then they finish, but the article ends with a revealing test for evaluating therapy. Now think about this. Outside the world, forget being in the church. Think about this from just a worldly perspective. Does therapy make you more capable of love, sacrifice? Okay, I can sort of buy into those two. Repentance? Does professional health therapy from a professional health standard make you more capable of repentance inside the Mormon Church? Of course. Forgiveness and covenant keeping. That's their life. You should find a therapist who helps you repent and helps you keep your covenants. That's
incredible.
That is one allowable conclusion that your therapy is allowed to have. Or does it? Now look at this. Or these are the bad things. Or does it make you more focused on self-protection? What's wrong with self-protection? Self-definition. In other words, learning who you are and knowing what your values are and figuring out that the church's values aren't yours. What's wrong with that? And self-gratification. I would call maybe some of that self-care. See how if you put a bad label on something, you make it bad, or you could put good labels on it and make it good. And that's only the start of my concern. So I'm going to go through a few slides here. I'm sorry if I take up a bunch of time. Number one, though, I wanted to name just the 5 main problems with this article. And I put some quotes on the right. Some of the quotes are positive, and some of the quotes show that they're playing a game, but they're using all of them right next to each other so that they are able to say to their audience they're doing good here when they're also playing games with words. So number one, it creates a suspicion. This article creates a suspicion toward therapists and coaches who may challenge Mormonism by embedding distrust in therapeutic support and in counselors who would support a Mormon's self-discovery that their Mormonism isn't true or is harmful via therapeutic straw men. The article constructs a picture of the dangerous therapist and warns believing members to watch for them. The problem is that many of its supposed warning signs could also arise from ethical therapy, helping a client recognize that aspects of their religious system, not the therapist, I got the ending there off, but not the therapist may be the problem. So there's that one. I don't want to go necessarily over the quotes. Folks can pause it and read it. Again, some of these I agree with, the quotes on the right, and some of them are showing how they're doing a bait and switch by setting the tone with one set of words and then slowly actually doing the game of apologetics with the others. Okay, next. Number 2, it shifts therapy from protecting client autonomy to protecting the faith. Therapy shouldn't aim to keep someone Mormon or make them ex-Mormon. It should help them understand themselves and exercise autonomy. If honest therapeutic exploration leads someone to conclude Mormonism is part of the problem, that outcome isn't evidence that the therapist undermined their faith. Okay, the quotes there on the right for that one. Number 3, it blurs devotion and coercion. They say that high demand religion is harmful. Or sorry, they're saying high demand religion isn't automatically harmful. Sacrifice, fasting, sexual restraint, missions, and tithing can be freely chosen religious commitments. We agree. I don't have any problem with that. I don't go into any conversation with a client and say, prayer's bad. Sacrifice is horrible. Fasting, oh my God, I can't believe you're fasting. What I do is I teach people that gaslighting is maybe happening, right? Like I have conversations with people to help them understand what gaslighting is and to ask them questions where they might notice aspects of gaslighting in their life. I talk about what shame is and how shame can be used as a mechanism by a system to get people to do things they wouldn't do otherwise. I can talk about boundaries, and a client can come to their own decision that sending their child into a room with a grown stranger man isn't appropriate. But they don't want to name the actual bad parts of a high demand religion. They want to name the general terms that none of us would go into any conversation and give blanket statements of them being bad. But so I continue here, but religion isn't immune from scrutiny either. Therapists should ask, is your participation voluntary? Oh, it's not? Like, let's talk about that. Why isn't it? What are the consequences if you say no to a calling? What are the consequences if you raise your hand and suggest that something in the church isn't accurate or right? What happens? That might be interesting to explore. Can you dissent safely? There's a question a coach or therapist would ask. Is there informed consent? Is shame or fear being used to enforce compliance? That's not necessarily pathologizing faith. That's distinguishing devotion from coercion. And yes, coaches and therapists in this space, when people either Mormon, doubting, or out come to therapists or coaches in this space, they are wanting to know why they feel the way they feel based on the things that are happening to them. I'm not telling them, they're telling me. Next, number 4, it minimizes important distinctions around shame, trauma, and boundaries. The article, that is. The article is right that not every religious struggle is trauma. Guilt can sometimes be healthy. Cutting people off shouldn't be encouraged casually. Almost every therapist or coach I know is going to agree with that. But guilt isn't the same as shame. Religious struggle isn't the same as religious trauma, and boundaries aren't necessarily rejection. The relevant question isn't simply, does religion make you uncomfortable? It's what happened and what psychological effect did it have? Number 5. Its final test exposes the article's theological bias. The article contrasts love, sacrifice, repentance, forgiveness, and covenant keeping. By the way, if your therapist is wondering how they can help you without you saying anything, they're wondering how they can help you be a better covenant keeper, maybe that's the problem. The article contrasts love, sacrifice, repentance, forgiveness, and covenant keeping with self-protection, self-definition, and self-gratification. But those aren't neutral psychological categories. Sometimes self-protection is healthy, and self-definition is precisely what therapy should help people develop. So the article risks committing the very mistake it warns therapists against, bringing a worldview into therapy and treating movement toward that worldview as evidence of psychological health. So there's the 5. Now,
They don't want members protecting themselves from the church, it sounds like.
they don't. If you're being hurt and forced by shame, by consequences that you can't criticize leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true, if you're hurt by the rigidity of your religion that is acting in unhealthy ways towards you, don't blame us. Blame your therapist for helping you notice that. So here, my last 2 slides, there is a legitimate warning here. Therapists shouldn't use their authority to dismantle someone's faith, but religious institutions shouldn't use mental health language to prevent people from critically examining their faith either. Good therapy, good therapist, good coaches shouldn't make you Mormon or ex-Mormon. It should help you understand yourself, to recognize the harm in your world, to exercise informed agency.
Unlike the temple.
Say what?
Unlike the temple.
Yes. And to decide for yourself what deserves your commitment. And so, as you pointed out, RFM, here's the game. The game they're playing here is actually pretty clever. It took me a while to sort of think about this. And Dr. D. Azevedo and Teresa and I had this conversation. I'll show the slide for that show in a minute. And I stammered a bunch through the episode because I was struggling to sort of articulate what it was that was going on, but I knew I was uncomfortable with it, and I was bothered by these two guys pretending to be helping under the guise of trying to get you to have a good therapist when really they're playing the game. So the game they're playing here is pretty clever. The article presents itself as simply helping Mormons recognize bad therapists. But underneath that, it's teaching Mormons to be suspicious of post-Mormon therapist and therapist. Let me say it again. To be suspicious of post-Mormon therapist and therapists who are experienced with faith crisis, especially when therapy starts revealing that Mormonism itself might be part of the problem. And that's the trick. Normal ethical therapy can involve questioning authority, examining shame, recognizing trauma, setting boundaries, and developing a stronger sense of self. But the article reframes each of those things as potential warning signs that your therapist is undermining your faith. It even specifically warns about therapists with experience in faith crisis or faith transition. Why do you think the client went to a therapist who is saying those phrases? Number one. Number two, what kinds of therapists and coaches use that kind of language? Post-Mormon therapist. That's who uses it. They're trying to scare people, not from just a bad therapist. They're trying to scare people away from post-Mormon therapists and coaches. And they warn about clients coming to see their church community, upbringing, or beliefs as the core problem or the source of their trauma. So they're essentially inoculating members ahead of time. If therapy starts to help you recognize unhealthy things about Mormonism, maybe Mormonism isn't the problem. Instead, you should distrust your therapist. And that's what makes the article so problematic. Under the guise of protecting Mormons from bad therapists, it's teaching them to distrust good therapists when that good therapy threatens Mormonism. And if you want to know, again, I covered this in whatever it was, 20 minutes. If you want to know more, it's an hour and 40-minute podcast. We recorded it, released it Sunday morning. It's playing apologetics with mental health. I'm joined by Teresa, my girlfriend. I'm also joined, who, by the way, is also a somatic trauma-informed coach who deals with, she has a specialty and she's incredible at it. She deals with people with chronic fatigue, certain symptoms that show up in your body because of the traumas that have happened to you in the past. And I sat down with Dr. Julie D. Azevedo, who is a therapist, runs her own practice, has 20 therapists underneath her, and has made a lifetime career of doing this work. And so if you want to understand more about how this article is complete bunk and is playing a sleight of hand and smoke and mirrors trick, check it out. Comments from you guys.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I'll say this article definitely struck a chord. I saw it posted a lot of places and people were very passionate, like you were, Bill, in your presentation about it. And my thought is just as the church points a finger at therapy, they're pointing all the rest of their fingers back at them. Because look at the kinds of therapists that the church will send you to and pay for you to go to. And a lot of these therapists, I mean, they are church broke. They are not allowed to talk to you about any kind of healthy behaviors, or perhaps recognize that the church may be at the root of some of the issues that you're having. I mean, I think about a person, this is This is somebody that I know who had a lot of stress and discomfort on Sundays, almost PTSD, and, just really dreaded going, would cry without knowing why. There's a lot of things at church that can cause high anxiety, right? And so the person goes to an LDS therapist, and of course, it can't at all be what's happening at church, right? It has to be something else. It never helped her unpack anything that might have been actually happening at church, or the fear of confrontation, or talking to the bishop, or high demand, high control. So in other words, never got to the root of anything or made any progress. I can only think that had she been able to go to a therapist or a coach, that person might have used the tools you described exactly, Bill, to just kind of unpack what is it about Sundays in particular that are making you have to take a Valium to get through the day. So I say point at other therapists, point back at yourself, LDS Church, because you're not doing your members any favors by sending them to people that can only follow the party line.
So 2 comments from me, Bill. Thank you, Rebecca. The first one is simply this. This reads like a list of spooky stories the camp counselor tells around the fire at night to keep the little Cub Scouts from wandering into the wilderness. They're ridiculous. They're ridiculously scary. That they're going to tell you to leave your spouse or what? No, that's the church's department. They're actually just jealous and envious that these non-Mormons are allegedly horning in on their action of splitting up families. We get to split up the families, not you guys, is what they're saying. And nobody's doing that. That's nobody who's a non-Mormon or a post-Mormon. The only ones I hear about doing that are Mormons. So this is just a scare piece. That's all it is, making up stories that have no basis in reality to scare people who are too immature to think about it or research it for themselves.
Yeah. Hence why it's playing apologetics with people's mental health.
Yeah. And here's a second comment, because this is just taking me back to when I joined the church and giants like Bruce A. McConkie roamed the earth. Well, we're going back in time, back to the future. This is from his first edition of Mormon Doctrine. Under psychiatry. Hey, Rebecca, could you read this? And then Bill, could you comment on it? Because I think it's really interesting that we're just, what's old is new again.
What's old is new. Okay, the first 4 words or so are covered by our likes and our people that are watching. So I can't see those. I can start.
Oh, it says the entries
devil.
for psychiatry. If you go to the P's and look up psychiatry in the first edition of Mormon Doctrine, you can also see other helpful articles in the same book, like Church of the Devil or Physicians.
Right. I can read after that. No doubt psychiatry, the study and treatment of mental disorders, has some virtue and benefit in certain cases, but in practice, in many instances, it is in effect a form of apostate, good heavens, apostate religion, which keeps sinners from repenting, gaining forgiveness, and becoming candidates for salvation. To
Sound familiar?
illustrate. What?
I was just saying, sound familiar?
It does sound familiar. How far did you want me to read? Just
All the
first
way through,
Oh, all the
please.
way. I'm going all the way. Here we go. To illustrate, an individual may go to a psychiatrist for treatment because of a serious guilt complex and consequent mental disorder arising out of some form of sex immorality, masturbation, for instance. Oh my God, this is very triggering to me to read this. It is not uncommon for psychiatrists in such situations to persuade the patient that masturbation itself is not an evil and that his trouble arises from the false teachings of the church, that such a practice is unclean, and that therefore, by discarding the teachings of the church, the guilt complex will cease and mental stability return. Yeah, you think? Okay. So in this way, iniquity is condoned, and many people are kept from complying with the law, whereby they could become clean and spotless before the Lord, in the process of which they would also gain the mental and spiritual peace that overcomes mental disorders. Page 58 through page 59, Mormon Doctrine. Oh my God, what we were raised on. Yeah.
Jacob Hess, making Mormonism
So
true
disturbing.
again.
Ugh.
I'll say this. If you're a Jehovah's Witness and you don't believe in blood transfusions, anybody who's suggesting you get a blood transfusion is working against your faith. They're undermining your religion. In reality, they're just trying to save your life. And when you're inside a system and that system does things in an unhealthy way and different than the rest of the world, as a believer, you have no choice but to see through your believing lens, and your religion is right and the entire world is wrong. But like the doctor who's trying to help the Jehovah's Witness by suggesting that you don't want to obey your religion, you really do want the blood transfusion. It's going to save your life. Now, it's your choice, but you should take the blood transfusion. In the same way, coaches and therapists are sitting down with people and trying to help them see the harm in their world and what is going on around that. What is the context? What is happening? And how does all that make you feel? And what is your experience when you constantly go through this same pattern over and over again, and you keep coming to see me because it's not going well? Why might that be? And so as therapists and coaches are trying to help people notice the patterns in their life and encourage them where the client wants to make changes or to see context maybe they were missing, and to make their life better, to have growth, to have autonomy, to have a life that has less pressure and more joy and happiness. What if it's the Jehovah's Witnesses that's the problem? What if it's Mormonism that's causing the harm? How would you know if you only chose a coach or therapist whose only conclusion they're allowed to lead you to is to stay in Mormonism? I can't hear you, RFM.
The church can't stand the idea of having any of its members alone with a certified health professional.
No. And they haven't since long before Bruce R. McConkie, and obviously still today and probably long after.
Yeah. Well, that's an incredible story. Thank you for covering that. Now we're going, I think, to Rebecca. Late breaking news. There's a member of the church in, I think it's Hong Kong. Or is there a question?
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to go ahead to my time-sensitive story of the new attractions on Temple Square. And if we have time, we'll come back to the other two that I have. So throw the slides up and I will go forward.
You don't want to talk about the Mormon getting on the wrong side of the road?
Oh, God.
Or the law, excuse me?
I do not. We will update if we have time, but here we go.
Okay.
Jesus Land. This is what I'm talking about. I found it so interesting. And you know I talk about this a lot. The headlines in a lot of places were new attractions are coming to one of Utah's most popular tourist spots. This is
a real headline from the Salt Lake Tribune, new attractions?
Yes, and I saw these new things on Temple Square called attractions in other news stories. I just thought that was funny because you know me, I'm beating that drum of it's Disneyfied, it's a theme park, and they're literally calling them attractions at a popular tourist spot.
You know what Joseph Smith's favorite carnival ride is, Rebecca?
Oh gosh, I'm afraid to ask.
Joseph Smith's favorite carnival ride, the Zipper.
Oh, God, I don't think I can get that image out of my mind, can I? I don't know if they had zippers back in the day.
They're putting lots of zippers on Temple Square, I predict.
Anyway, they are just going full steam ahead with all of these changes. And again, most of these follow along the trajectory of those leaked plans back in 2022, where they gave surveys to people leaving Temple Square, and they took those to heart, what people liked, didn't like, were confused about, and they're implementing these changes. And one of the things the survey revealed was that people didn't see Jesus on Temple Square. There really was not a lot of Jesus. There was the Christus, but the rest of it was a lot of church history. That's my experience going to Temple Square over the years up until just recently. So this article says a host of new experiences will be available to guests before, during, and after next year's much anticipated 6-month open house for the renovated Salt Lake Temple, according to a news release from the LDS Church. They're very excited to put this out. The exhibits, presentations, videos, and more will be located in all the main venues: Joseph Smith Memorial, Conference Center, and Salt Lake Tabernacle. These new experiences have been designed to help all guests learn of Jesus Christ. I'm telling you, it all goes back to those surveys and the leaked plans of what needs to happen at Temple Square, right? To make the public more comfortable there. He is the focus, says Apostle Dale Renland. We hope and pray that the millions of guests, millions who are going to come to Temple Square every year and engage with these new experiences will be inspired and come to follow the Savior better. So I just kind of made a list here of the new things, and these know that they shut down the conference center for renovations, and now we can kind of see what they're going to do. I made this, of course, welcome to my big show, right? It is all
They
going to
could
be about Jesus.
they could fit an
Very
entire
exciting.
roller coaster inside the conference center, and if they turned out the lights, it would be like Space Mountain.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it might not be too far in the future, because don't forget, as I've been reporting on to great disbelief for a couple years now, top leaders did go to Disneyland to learn about ticketing, people moving, signage, apps. We're going to talk about that in a second. Anyway, so here's what's new. Here's what's coming up. In the Joseph Smith Memorial Building, there's going to be a chapel experience. That is a mock chapel, some kind of chapel where they're going to show visitors, this is, maybe they're going to do this. Here is the church. Here is the steeple. They're going to teach them what an LDS sacrament meeting is like. They're going to explain sacrament. In all of these news releases, it says /communion. Mark my words, they're going to start calling it communion pretty soon. I'm not even kidding. So you have the chapel experience. You're going to have a Life of Christ theater. You can go in and see movies about the life of Christ, a Life of Christ children's area.
In the theater, they're actually going to have Jesus Matronics.
They could do that. They could do that, sort of like Chuck E. Cheese. Is that what you're talking about? Maybe. They're going to have a children's area. They're going to have a children's area, where people can participate in activities about the life of Christ. Of course, what's missing here is anything to do with church history, Joseph Smith, restoration. This does not exist here. And a Life of Christ lobby with pictures of Christ where you can sit and contemplate the life of Christ. In the conference center, this is what's been shut down for a while, a prophet's gallery and displays. Now, I don't know if, I'm guessing these are going to be New Testament, Old Testament prophets, but they may also be restoration prophets. I don't know. They're really trying to keep it mainstream, so we'll have to see what kind of prophets they're talking about. The Christus statue, another replica of our famous Christus statue that we borrowed, that's going to be in the conference center. Artwork and scripture displays. Okay, and I'm guessing this is all going to be New Testament, life of Christ, a personal revelation experience. Now,
what is that?
I'm interested in. I do not know. I'm hoping to go and find out. I don't know if it's a room where you all sit down and ask for personal revelation. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds pretty fascinating. Maybe it's a room where you go and try to figure out who you're supposed to marry or what you're supposed to, I don't know what it's supposed to be. And a temple viewing experience, meaning there's a big window, much like they did at the Nauvoo Visitor Center, that looks out over the temple, and you can stand there and be inspired. But
temple
the
viewing
really
experience.
interesting thing,
it sounds like people are standing around looking at the temple. That's what that sounds like.
yeah, but no, it's called a temple viewing experience. You got to,
I know, it makes it sound so much better.
elevate
Like the life of Christ petting zoo.
Oh my God. Yeah, you can think of all these things. Yeah, the 90 and 99 and 1 petting zoo. But here's the really interesting thing, that Salt Lake Tabernacle, right? They no longer have conference there. They have it in the conference center, but they still have concerts and all kinds of things in the tabernacle. They're going to have a dome projection show. It's going to be like scenes from the life of Christ on the dome of the tabernacle. You cannot tell me they did not get this idea from some kind of Disney engineers, from looking at some of the things that they offer at Disneyland. I don't know if it's going to be a laser show. I doubt it. I think it's more going to be movies on the ceiling. What do you guys think about that? I mean,
A laser show would be cool.
Not your grandparents' visitor center. I'll just say that.
They should choreograph a 1970s laser show to Dreamweaver.
I know. I've seen one of those before. I love laser light shows.
I did too.
Anyway, they have just upped the game substantially, and I'll be curious to hear any feedback from any of you that go and see any of these things. These are kind of things that are upcoming. I don't think they're quite available right now, but it's all in preparation for next April to October, where the entire world, forget the Vatican, they're going to be flocking to Temple Square. And not only that, speaking of the LDS Temple open house, the tickets are coming on the market, right? Again, this is all on an app. This is all the ideas they got from Disneyland, how to move people, how to get ticketing, how to crowd control. So if you want to know what's going on, beginning September 1st, it's coming up. You got to put this on your calendar, little alarm, 11 a.m. This is like trying to get Taylor Swift tickets, right? You got to be right there. You got to be ready to push that button. Guests can reserve your tickets for the open house, and you have to know what your schedule is April to October of next year. So figure that out. figure when you want to go to the open house of the Salt Lake Temple. And there it is. It's going to be Monday through Saturday, 8:40 to 8 p.m. And also remember, we reported on this, it's going to be open on Sundays. Remember that?
Yeah.
Noon to 8 p.m. So you can go to church and then go to Temple Square. Anyway, it's very exciting. Put that on your calendar. Are either of you planning on going?
I'm not. Are you, Bill?
I think we should do a group thing. I think this would be
Yep.
would be fun.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I do have a comment, by the way. Do you mind if I share it here?
No, please do. And I was going to say, a lot of us are thinking that we should reserve tickets right around Sunstone because a lot of us will be in town. And again, to go as a group, I think might strike fear into the hearts of, whoever might notice that we're there. But I think it'd be fun to all go together. So if anybody's online September 1st, grab a bank of tickets. Let's get a lot and try to go.
I was trying to figure out why, because you've gone over this story a lot, and it always makes me smile. And I'm trying to figure out why I'm sort of caught off guard by it. And I think this is the reason, right? We all grew up with a Mormonism that spoke about how pageantry and ostentation, so let me just give 4 quotes. Spencer W. Kimball, again, the faces aren't them. AI did that, but these are the real quotes. Spencer Kimball, they replaced, this is talking about like the apostasy stuff, right? They replaced the simple ways and program of Christ with spectacular rituals, colorful display, impressive pageantry, in limitless pomposity, and called it Christianity. Kimball continues that Christianity had thereby become an elaborate, colorful, man-made system. Spencer Kimball. Joseph F. Smith said, "We do not make the ordinance of baptism a spectacular display, but the simplicity of the order established in the Church of Christ ought rather to add to than take from the sacred character. Glamour, L. Tom Perry, glamour and mystery do not lead to eternal life, and each assignment filled and each lesson learned leads more securely to the celestial kingdom than do pomp and ceremony and ostentation." Heber J. Grant said there was nothing of ostentation, pageantry, or dramatic display. It was a simple, solemn occasion, talking about the first vision.
Yeah. It was the first vision experience.
Yeah.
No, that it describes exactly how I was raised. I would say, how come my friends in the Baptist church have bands and music and they seem to have parties and it's very exciting, celebrate birthday of Jesus, that kind of stuff? And my parents would say, no, it's simple. We don't do the pageantry. We have the truth. We are very austere. I think a lot of us were raised that way, and we're kind of scratching our head at what this is now. It's way more exciting for the kids, the music, all of that. But to see the leaders getting excited about it when you very well know that that is not how we were all raised, it's really funny. But that's what you have to do to appeal to mainstream Christians, to get those converts, change your chapel. Basically, what are we restoring? It's a horseshoe. We restored away from it, and now we're going back to what everybody has always done. It's kind of like an anti-restoration.
This is the opposite of a plain chapel with no art in the chapel and sandpaper stapled to the walls all over the building. This is the opposite of that. And what it indicates is what they've done in the past is no longer working. They are to a point where they need to break their own statements and create pageantry, create ceremony, create fun, make Temple Square an amusement park, because people aren't going to go there otherwise.
No, I think they really did pay attention to those surveys. Some of the other things on the surveys that led to these plans were women said they didn't feel comfortable there. Minorities said they didn't feel comfortable there. And everybody said, we don't know what the hell it's all about. We came here, we looked at a building, we have no idea what your religion is or what your temple is. And you can see the things they're implementing, the little dollhouse cutouts, things like that. They're trying to show people what Mormonism is about based on feedback saying, we don't know. Temple Square told us nothing, and we felt weird and unwelcome.
Yeah. So thank you so much for covering that. I think that they're framing this sort of like a World's Fair. From April to October. I was just doing a little research for whatever reason the other night, which means something crazy came up in my feed and I clicked on it. And it's the Seattle World's Fair, 1962, from April to October. And then I thought, oh, I think that's what the church is going for. That look.
Yep.
If only they had Elvis, I'd be there in a heartbeat.
There might be an Elvis impersonator. Maybe one of the 12. I'm trying to think which one would do that best. Probably Uchtdorf.
Which of the
could probably pull
12
that off.
plus the
Yeah,
3
which of the
is
12?
the most likely to be an Elvis impersonator?
Yeah. In the chat, go.
I think David Bednar.
Really?
I think he can swivel those hips when he needs to.
He's got a good head of hair, maybe, but I don't know if he has the charisma.
Elder Razband.
Oh,
Elder
okay.
Razband.
Okay.
Well, since my baby left me,
Bum, bum.
and from our local overachiever, Bill Reel, is going to cover a story about another overachiever, at least self-professed overachiever, named Elder Kieran.
This is another one. When I saw the title, I go, oh, look at this guy doing self-deprecating humor about how much he's accomplished in life, you know?
Oh my gosh.
The article is actually much more interesting than that. At BYU Education Week, Apostle Patrick Kieran delivered a devotional aimed especially at people who are driven, productive, and chronically worried that they are still not doing enough. Sounds like Mormonism, doesn't it?
I wonder
Yes, those are
why.
Mormons. He's talking about Mormons. Well, that makes sense. He's a Mormon apostle.
Don't go to a therapist and find out why you feel that way, for God's sake, right?
No, don't do that. Kieran acknowledged that goal setting and achievement can be valuable and are particularly prominent within Latter-day Saint culture, but warned that they become unhealthy when people begin tying their self-worth to productivity and success. Achievement for the sake of achieving does not result in lasting peace, he said. Now, I want you to take note of this, because when I read the rest of this, you're going to notice it sounds a lot different than the messages of the past. And so with that, the article there is on the right. Latter-day Saint Apostle shares his own struggle with achievement. As I go to the next two slides, I put an old Mormon quote on the right, and it'll be the Mormonism we all remember. And then I'll read Kieran's words on the left. I'll read the quote on the right, and notice they don't match. So here we go. This is Kieran again, or this is me making notes about Kieran's talk. Perhaps the most significant part of Kieran's message was directed at Latter-day Saints who wonder whether their best will ever be good enough. He told them explicitly that your best is certainly good enough, that these people are deeply loved, and it isn't your achievements that define you. That's new. I don't think Mormonism's ever said that before. His conclusion pushed against a transactional model of spirituality. There is no try harder button that produces Christ's love, he said, and no goal, plan, or program can manufacture it. We do not build it. We receive it from him at his hand. That's a message I've not heard before in Mormonism. Here's Marion G. Romney. This is the Mormonism I grew to love. He said, the truth spoken by Nephi when he said, we are saved by grace after all we can do. And then he gets his own words. Marion G. Romney said, it will require maximum effort for us to bring ourselves within the reach of the atoning blood of Jesus Christ so that we can be saved. There will be no government dole which can get us through the pearly gates, nor will anyone go through those gates who wants to go through on the efforts of another. That's the Mormonism I grew up to love. That's it.
Sounds like your best to me.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to read the rest of here my comments on Kieran, and then we'll read this other quote. Perhaps the most significant part of Kieran's message was directed at Latter-day Saints who wonder whether their best will ever be good enough. He told them explicitly that your best is certainly good enough. Is that the same one I had before? Your best is certainly good enough, that they are deeply loved.
It is.
It
All the way
is.
through.
It's the same message over and over.
Yeah, well, it is, but I should have had, dang it.
Well, isn't it Doctrine and Covenants, section 17, verse 4? 14:7.
Read it to
14:7 that says that, eternal life is given to those who keep all the commandments of God. That's all you got to do is keep every effing commandment, every waking moment of your entire life. And sometimes when you're in your sleep, right, Elder Packer? So you just got to, that's all you got to do. It's not your best. It's just doing everything that you're told to do.
Let's see here.
All works based, right? It was described to me once the difference between Mormonism and Christianity. In Christianity, if somebody falls into a pit of quicksand and they're struggling, Jesus reaches down and helps you back up with his
I mean,
love.
if you yell for
right?
him first.
Right? Well, yeah, you probably do. In Mormonism, Jesus stands on the side, filing his nails. You struggle, you claw, you are desperate. You do every single thing you can possibly do until you're about to die, and then he'll reach down and pull you out. That's Mormonism. And that was supposed to be a positive lesson in young women.
Oh, that was a lesson you actually had?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have to do every single thing we can until we're almost dead from trying.
Yes.
And then we have earned Christ's help.
That's your
And
best.
then they made fun of regular Christianity. Christ just helps you. Who does that? Yeah. It's a very sick message.
All right. So here was the quote I'm missing. Kieran argued that excessive striving can become spiritually counterproductive because it puts the individual, their effort, their hustle, their accomplishments, and their self-improvement at the center of the story rather than Christ. But that's what Mormonism taught us to do. His message was essentially an invitation to slow down, drawing partly on his own tendency toward overachievement. He encouraged members to embrace rest, stillness, Sabbath observance, contemplation. Does Mormonism really want you contemplating? I don't think so.
No, it does not. Absolutely not, Bill. But you see, he can't help himself because what he has done is saying, instead of doing everything the church tells you to do, I'm going to give you 4 more things you got to do on the Sabbath.
Yes. It looks like he's giving you a break.
Yes.
But the old commandments never go away, do they?
No. Here's some more commandments that you need to follow so that you won't feel so bad about not keeping all the first commandments.
So rest, stillness, Sabbath observance, and contemplation, rather than treating discipleship as another endless checklist of things to accomplish.
Let's see. Embrace rest, check. Stillness, check. Sabbath observance, check. And contemplation, check.
Please slow down, he said. Be still and wait for the Spirit of the Lord. Now, let me add this one back, take that off the screen, add this one back up. This was N. Eldon Tanner. Again, this is the Mormonism I grew up with. Yeah. If you are happy, continue to work. Idleness gives room for doubts and fears. Mm-hmm. If sorrow overwhelms you and loved ones seem not true, work. If disappointments come, work. If faith falters and reason fails, just work. When dreams are shattered and hopes seem dead. By the way, this is why you might need a good therapist or coach, is because this sounds to me like self-loathing, learned helplessness, and deep depression. Yeah. That's what this sounds like to me. When dreams are shattered and hopes seem dead, work. Work as if your life were in peril. It really is. I was
wondering if Eldon Tanner was a workaholic or something. You think so?
I think the last 30 years, he got a pretty good break.
Well, he was Canadian, very, very smart with money. And I think the story is he single-handedly got the church out of the negative position it was in because of building chapels all over the world where the membership would not support it.
Was that Henry D. Moyle who did that to them?
That was his plan. If you build them, they will come. And they didn't. They got baptized, but that was only for playing baseball. They didn't actually go to church or anything.
Yeah. Tanner was very frugal. He put everything back on track. Yeah.
He finishes here, no matter what ails you, work. Work faithfully. Work with faith. Work is the greatest material remedy available. Work will cure both mental and physical afflictions. I'll just note in finishing, Kieran is saying, look, I know we say after all you can do, but man, you guys are all just beating yourselves up and you're doing too much. But until Brad Wilcox came along, Stephen Robinson, Robert Millett, until those guys put a different spin on grace, every LDS leader was telling you that it was your job to do all you could do.
Mhm.
And if you didn't, shame on you. And then Eldon Tanner wonders why you might have dreams that are shattered and your hopes seem dead. And everything is just falling apart around you. It's because Mormonism puts such a burden on you that I would suggest to every good Mormon out there, you probably need a good therapist or a coach.
Yeah, no matter what ails you, work faithfully and work on and on. It's like an I am Groot talk.
Yeah, and I
That
think
just
that's
does the same thing over and over.
I think that's what COVID did. You know what I mean? It got people off that hamster wheel. It let them stop necessarily. They had to for a minute. And look what happened during COVID. A lot of people got off the hamster wheel for good, right? Because they felt better and their family was happier and they didn't need a therapist.
Oh, the new Sunday schedule. Yes, thank you so much for that, Rebecca.
I know.
The new Sunday schedule, which is fast upon us.
That's
It's
right.
going to, I hope everybody brings their track shoes. It starts
just
September,
wait.
doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And if we have 5 more minutes, I'll just do this really quickly. Like I said, this is time sensitive too. Of course, we all know the new schedule is going to start on September 6th. Now, the new schedule is going to be sacrament meeting for, I think, 50 minutes and then 2 25-minute Sunday school, young men, young women, priesthood, relief society with a 5-minute break in between. This is something that looks great on paper, right? You can see it on paper, but I'm telling you, bathroom breaks alone are going to crumble this entire system. There's an awesome article in by Common Consent, and I kind of paraphrased it here, where they came up with a bunch of reasons that this is just not going to work, or actually not really made for real people, right? It looks great on paper, but it's not going to work. 5 minutes is not enough transition time. We just talked about that. Parents with small children have even more to do, getting them to nursery, getting them to primary, taking them to the bathroom. No way that's only going to take 5 minutes. Bathroom breaks become almost impossible. I talked to a friend who's in church leadership. He is already gearing up to leave sacrament meeting early, use the restroom to get to his class in time. People are making plans. Older and disabled members can't be expected to rush. And this is absolutely true. It's hard to get to those classes, especially for somebody that's older or disabled. Church buildings are not designed for everybody to move at once. You know, that's true. You know how narrow those halls are. And as Bill pointed out, sandpaper, stapled to the walls. It's very uncomfortable. It assumes that every meeting ends on time. If you go over by 2 minutes, everything is thrown into chaos. Primary is going to create a major traffic problem as parents literally throw their children into the room or into the nursery as they run to their own class because they've only got 25 minutes. It discourages one of the major benefits of attending church, and that is community. And that's my big issue here. This is why I keep talking about this loss of community. And as I look at faithful social media, people recognize this and they are concerned and they're really sad about what it's going to mean. Socialize before church conflicts with this emphasis on reverence. Socializing after church doesn't really work either. Primary teachers may miss the after church socializing entirely, and it may particularly hurt people who rely on church for their only social connection. And informal conversations can actually be ministering in the hall. They are. That's how you check on people in a normal way. And this is not going to happen. There is going to be an absolute drill sergeant, I guarantee you, in the halls that is going to be getting people to class, moving them to class. And the schedule may work perfectly on paper, but very poorly with actual humans. And so I made this little meme here. This is what we're going to be wearing to church now. It's a tracksuit. You got a stopwatch. You got your wristbands. You got your headband. You got your water bottle, because you have got to get there. And now the focus is on, this intense getting there in 5 minutes. But I'm hoping, Bill, that you can just pull up this thing that popped up on my feed today. Like I said, faithful members are concerned. They're worried. They're trying to strategize. They're trying to work it out. This is a Relief Society presidency member, I'm assuming, in Arizona. And there's something that they do that everybody in their ward is really concerned is not going to happen anymore, but they're going to fit it in. By gosh, they're going to do it.
With the upcoming changes to the schedule for second hour in church, I have been receiving a lot of questions about whether or not our Relief Society is going to continue with our Diet Cokes and treats. And if we are, how is that actually going to work? And so I am here to tell you kind of how we're going to do that and the way we see it working in Our Relief Society. The tradition of bringing Diet Cokes and treats to class is going to stay. We feel like it's a very important element of Our Relief Society. Part of the reason as to why we come to Relief Society on Sundays in the handbook is to build unity. And we have found that there is a lot of sisterhood created in the friendships made as we sit and drink our drinks and eat our treats. So
Okay, that's enough. You don't have to show anymore. And I'm laughing, sort of, but I'm not laughing because this sister and the sisters in her ward are literally completely concerned about losing this community. They have this tradition of dirty soda and treats. It's basically like the other Christians do coffee and donuts. You chat, you have community, you bond over treats. But she goes on later to say, now, during the 5 minutes, we're going to be working very quickly to get you all of your treats, handing them out really fast. So then you can sit down and then participate in the meat of the gospel, as she says. So more power to this lady. You know what? Trying to keep it normal when her church has said, oh no, you got 5 minutes and then you got 25 minutes. And it's a total, I'm going to put out a call to everybody. If you are going to church in September, please drop me a line and let me know how it goes. Let any of us know how it goes. I think we would like to do some kind of follow-up on how it's all happening. That first Sunday, they're going to be showing instructional videos on how the hell to make the system work, right? But then going forward, it's actually going to be in practice. So I'd love to hear some feedback on that. So anyway, that's the last story I have. Any thoughts from you two on Diet Coke and treats? I'm guessing priesthood doesn't get that. And just the schedule in general as we're ending here.
Can we go to you first, Bill? I'm still trying to recover from this. What church is this? This is not the church I was baptized into.
Oh, no.
We're going to continue our tradition of drinking Diet Coke in
I
Relief
couldn't bring a
Society.
Diet Coke to
What
church.
the holy hell just happened?
Here's my thought. Jacob Hansen a few weeks ago wanted Mormons who would die for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that sounds significant. But why not at least make a mild sacrifice and where it depends? This will allow you to go from sacrament to Sunday school to priesthood. You'll make it. You just let it go. Right in your depends diaper. This is less of a sacrifice than dying for the gospel of Jesus Christ. You Mormons, you can do this. You can wear a diaper and not miss any of your classes because this is what the Lord requires of you.
Yep.
That's great.
Amen.
All this frenetic
Amen.
activity you're describing that's going to be taking place during the 5-minute break is bringing to mind the the knighting scene from The Court Jester.
I was going to play that with Danny Kaye, but I thought you and I would be the only ones that would get it, where they said, speed up the ceremony. And they're like, make the promise, it just goes so fast. It's going to be ridiculous. I can't wait.
Yes. Very good. Well, is that everything? I'm not even sure that's everything. Let me see. That was
No, there were some
Bill's.
earlier ones, but we're going to save those till next time because they're not time sensitive. So
Right.
we can end, yeah.
Well, there's a story that Bill still has in the lineup, Rebecca. Did you want to talk
no,
about?
That's mine. That's another one that we'll just
Oh,
save
that's
till
yours
next time.
too?
Yeah, I had a bunch of little stories that were kind of in there that were interesting, but we'll do those next time.
Okay. Doesn't look like there's anything little about this story.
Oh, no.
All right, then. Well, we do get to talk about what's coming up next. And every Monday night, the next thing that's coming up is Tuesday, which is when Mormonish has its show. So, I'm sorry. Here, let me just remove this. I'll go down here.
Forward.
We'll move forward to what comes next. And tell us about it, Rebecca.
Well, I don't know if you guys have heard of this soundtrack that is out, Ex-Mormon the Musical. It's audio for now, but it's the soundtrack of a musical. And I think someday it actually will be a musical. It was created by John and Rochelle Moyer. You may be familiar with John Moyer. He created the Singles Ward movie that you may have seen back in the day, the RM, the home teacher, right?
All of them?
All those. Yeah. And so he and his wife have gotten together and put together this musical with songs that reflect a deconstruction journey. They're funny, they're poignant, they're wonderful. And so we're just going to get to know them. This is on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. And then RFM, just for you, we are on episode 7 of Who Authored the Book of Mormon with my guest, Patrick. We're going to be talking about court cases where word print studies are admitted and used as evidence, and also some conspiracy theories that post-Mormons find themselves believing, whether they know they do or not. So that will be either Thursday or Friday. I'm not sure yet. But again, continuing series, episode 7. And that's all I have coming up next week.
Very good. So Patrick Birch is going to be talking about conspiracy theories that Mormons other than he believe.
Post-Mormons. Ones that we
Post-Mormons.
necessarily must believe as post-Mormons, and we may not even recognize it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Little introspection's never a bad thing. This Wednesday on Mormonism Live, we've got an interview with Thomas W. Murphy in his new book that's just come out. And we've got a lot of slides. We've got a great thumbnail. But more importantly, we've got the man himself, Dr. Thomas W. Murphy, who after a lot of work got this book published. It's remarkable. I'm more than halfway through. Really, really good, solid piece of scholarship. My hat's off to you, Thomas W. Murphy. And he's going to be hitting the highlights of his book with Bill Reel and I and you this Wednesday on Mormonism Live. Then comes Mormonism After Dark on Friday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time. We are going to change that time to 7 o'clock p.m. once September gets here, which is getting close. So I'm trying to announce that every time because I'm sure some people will be there an hour late and wonder what the heck happened. And I'll be able to say, see, I told you so. You just need to listen more. And RFM is going to be having a new show on Saturday, and it's going to be very, very interesting. And if it goes the way I plan, which it doesn't always, sometimes things intervene, it's going to be about E.T., the extraterrestrial, and how he single-handedly destroys Mormon apologetics. It's like a cross between E.T. and Godzilla. Here's something Bill's working on.
Yeah, so I was supposed to put this out last Sunday, but because of the late edition of sitting down with Julie and Teresa and having a conversation of playing apologetics with mental health, this will be this Sunday, the LDS Missionary Discussions, If the Church Was Honest, discussion number 4 on church history.
Wow. Very good. Do you know how many discussions there are going to be?
There's 9 of them total.
There's 9 of them?
Mm-hmm.
Is
In
that?
order to be honest, you have to have more than 6.
I thought there were only 6.
Yeah, but in order to be honest and transparent, it took 3 more.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it would take a little bit more to be honest and transparent. There's so much they don't actually talk about. And that comes to the end of tonight's podcast, Mormon Church Backpedaling. They sure are. Even at the same time, they're telling you they're not. And that's why it's called Gaslight the World. All right. Any final comments, or I'm heading out on this puppy?
I have one question. Bill, at what point in these discussions, your series, do you ask people to be baptized? Are you like most missionaries? Is it after the first episode?
I think it's necessary for all 9 conversations to happen before somebody would be able to agree to baptism with what I would be comfortable with as a reasonable amount of informed consent.
Unusual take on it. Yeah.
I actually think they should probably attend for a couple of months too before they even get asked the question of getting baptized.
Yep.
Wow. I was such a good missionary. I asked him to get baptized before the first discussion.
Elder Ballard's proud of you, even if he says he isn't.
Yes, he is. And there's another absolutely contradictory message the church gives, gaslighting the world. It's what they do. So everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Please join us next Monday evening. By the way, hit like and subscribe if you would. The like is the thumbs up button. The subscribe is the little thing that says subscribe on it. Just hit them both. And would you do it at Mormonish and Mormon Discussions? Because we are simulcasting from both of these places right now. You're watching it on only one, most likely. So if you hit like and subscribe where you are, and then go over to the companion show and hit like and subscribe there, everybody will be very, very happy. I know that. So once again, please join us in another week for a great Mormon newscast next Monday. Until then, good night, everybody. This is Radio Free Mormon. That's Bill Reel. And over there is Rebecca Biblioteca. Once again, glad you could make it tonight, Rebecca. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.